sitting here.
Nice. That works.
Yeah. So I was just telling Bethany, like today's launch group is for a couple potential purposes, depending on where you guys want to go with it. I knew it would be a smaller group, but we can work through any like questions or projects you're working on, things that you want to kind of bounce off of other people. We can also do some brainstorming about things you can do over the next 2 weeks to reach out to your sphere to try to drum up some potential business for the start of the year. This is, there's people are really distracted right now, but Bethany and I were talking about how just over the last couple weeks, we've noticed a jump in new buyers to the market, which is kind of weird for this time of year, but could be a good opportunity. I also think a lot of people right now are highly distracted. We're nearing Christmas. It's like, oh my gosh, I have 25 things to do. That's how I feel right now. But once you're actually in Christmas, people are sitting on their phones and messing around on social media and looking on their Zillow app, especially New Year's Day. If people are kind of sitting around thinking about the new year. So it's a good time to make some contact without, being too annoying about it. There's some things you can do. So yeah, we can talk about that too. But do you guys have anything that you've been working on, kind of pushing through, trying to figure out that might be good to bounce off of other people?
I have like a property that we put an offer in. It's the husband of a wife that I've been working with a long time, and out of the blue, he decided that he wanted to get an investment property. So we found like it ended up being a foreclosed home in Waukesha, my first foreclosed home. So just kind of working through how slow they are to sign things and get back, and like that kind of thing, even though they want it. They want to keep the January 22nd close. It's like, you haven't even sent back the signed offer. And it's like, it's like, that's fine. You can send that back when you eventually get to it, but I'm going to have to amend the closing date. You can't give me 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we'll see, because they have to go in
financed,
for mine.
Or is it a cash
It
purchase?
is. It's financed, and it's A+ mortgage, and they're ready to go. Everything's ready to go, but we can't do anything because we have to do the inspection, and they have to go get a plumber to de-winterize the plumbing so they can be inspected.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, go do it.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, they drag their feet on stuff like that. I'm surprised they're not charging the buyers to de-winterize. A lot of times that expense falls on the buyer.
Yeah, well, they didn't. So, and they're giving us $1,000 in credit, closing credits. They're not doing the home warranty or the gap insurance, but then they're giving us $1,000 in closing credit. So,
okay, that's nice. That's unusual.
I'll take
Usually
it.
with foreclosures, they won't give you anything. They're like, hey, you want to buy it? Send us an offer at the end.
Right. Yeah, they were asking 134.9, and we kind of settled at 134, so we got a little bit off, but they still are giving us the closing credits. So
cool. Yeah, I mean, foreclosures, it varies depending on the lender who is foreclosing on the property, but yes, typically, I mean, you're working with bank hours, so if you write an offer on a weekend, you're not going to get a reply until the weekdays. And
we have holidays now.
Holidays. And there's oftentimes more than one person making the decision. So you have to allow time for them to like have their meeting and go through the offer and all that stuff, have their attorney look at it. So yeah, it's a slower process. It's not as slow as a short sale, generally speaking. But it is,
which is funny.
Definitely slower than working with a traditional. I know, right? It's such a misnomer. Short sales are not short. They're the opposite.
Right.
Just means the
one interesting thing I found out about it is with the selling agent is, we were going, I put in an offer and he came back, he called me and he's just like, well, I have a small counter for you, blah, blah, blah. He told me stuff. And so I expected that he was going to then email me, like a counter offer, but and so I'm waiting, and I went back, and I was in my car when I got the phone call. So I went back home and checking my email, and then I decided to, just send them an email saying, thank you for the phone call. I'll, keep my eye open for the counter. And I wasn't getting it and wasn't getting it. And so I called another one of, an agent I work with, and I'm like, how long does that usually take? And she's like, you should have got it by now. So then I called him, left a voicemail and said, haven't seen the counter come through. Then he sent me a message and said, oh, we're just doing verbals right now. I'm like, can you do that? Which I wasn't sure. So I'm like, oh, well, okay. Well, this is what my buyer said,
Yeah.
So we've been doing verbals back and forth.
Obviously, but yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to like the efficiency of it, that will happen where you'll get verbals before they want to put anything on paper, and usually you end up putting it on paper as the buyer's agent. So yeah, foreclosures are they're a little goofy. They can be a little bit more work on our part as a buyer's agent. There's not a ton of them out there either. I mean, every once in a while I get a new buyer who's like, so tell me about foreclosures, because I think they're going to get a deal. And like, this is not the market for that. Maybe, maybe with everything with COVID, we might see more pop up, but this is not the time. 2008 to 2012, 13, like that was the time to get a deal. But there are some once in a while. And oftentimes there's competition for them. So it's cool that you didn't have to deal with that.
I think, we just this just is working out. There is no competition, and
nice.
Fine, whatever. Yeah.
Is this his first investment property, or has he done this before?
Yes. No.
Okay.
Yeah, he's never bought a house. I am actually working with the wife to buy the family home. And then they're doing that like kind of separately. He's doing his own thing, and he decided he's doing this investment property. And then she's working on buying the family home.
Cool. Is he doing this as a flip or as a rental?
Well, he had thought about doing it as a buy and rent it. It's a single family. But the comps on it, I mean, it was assessed at 171 and it's being sold for 134.
Okay.
So we're thinking, depending on, I mean, we have to go through the inspection yet. So, barring that there's no major defects, foundation and all that kind of stuff. It's not in bad shape. It needs cosmetic upgrades, obviously, that kind of, but, he might be able to, turn around and put it back on the property for spring and just, pull out a bunch of equity and move on to another one.
Yeah. Well, that, a good resource for you and or for him would be the flip book from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent series. There's one called Flip. There's also one called the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. There's some good stuff in both of those. That might be something to tap into, either for yourself that you can kind of share info from, or to provide him. One of the things I did, if any of you guys are working with investors or people who want to become investors, is I bought several copies of the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. They're like, I don't know, $17 or something like that, something reasonable. We can order them through the office. Megan can order them for you. And I'm just delivering those to some of my investor clients who are either starting out or maybe they own a couple properties. So they're relatively new to investing, but it's such a great resource that I'm going to bring those books to them just as a
good idea.
Planning for next year, kind of helping them build their empire, providing them resources. I'm not trying to get them to buy anything right now, but they know I'm their go-to if they need anything regarding investment.
Right.
So that's an easy one.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, Alex, how's it going?
I'm trying to keep up with the holidays.
Yeah.
Which I feel like I'm always running behind.
Yeah. I feel that way too. I thought, this year we don't have anything to do. Like, we don't have any parties to go to. We don't have any of, fundraisers, any of that stuff. And somehow I'm still behind. But we were saying before you jumped on, the last 2 weeks, it has been busier with buyer activity than I am used to this time of year. Usually it slows down, but it seems to have picked up. I guess people don't have much to do or something. So Yeah, and they
And
did announce that stimulus package yesterday, so that may jumpstart some things if anybody was concerned.
who would have thought that the industry could have gotten along so well without any open houses,
Yeah,
official open houses?
yeah, I think the fact that we have all this online home shopping available to us and that we could still do showings in person, I think that
Mhm.
really made it less of a concern. I haven't done one open house this year. I'm kind of looking forward to doing them again next year, though. They're a good way to find new business, and just a good way to kind of get a feel for what buyers are thinking out there. Um, but not that it hurt my business this year to not do them, but it was something I missed doing. So yeah, yeah, Grady, if you're looking to pick up new buyers, that's a great resource. Open houses are really good for that. I almost always get at least one, but
So Amanda, can I ask you
yeah,
for, because I've been doing a ton of open houses this whole time. Anytime
yeah,
there's an open house, I jump on it. So,
yeah,
and I do get leads off them once in a while. And I'll like, if they don't have the agent, talk to them, to them about giving me, I'll give them my app, all that kind of stuff.
mhm,
I'll follow up with a email, set them up on an MLS search if they, give me their criteria.
yeah,
Sometimes I don't get a really good response back, even though they're very interested. Like,
mhm,
it's a fine balance. It's like, how aggressive or annoying do you get or not?
yeah,
It's like, I don't want to scare them off, but I don't want to lose them. If they're going out to open houses, there's another agent that's going to get them.
yeah. I mean, there's a certain level of fear I feel that buyers have when they go to an open house. They're very like, no, I'm good. I'm just looking. Like it's like when you're in a store and somebody offers to help you and you're like, I'm fine. Um, there's a good amount of that going on. I think what I find works best for me is to just have a conversation with them. Oh, tell me about, are you looking at other houses today? Do you live in the area? You know, it
Yeah.
it leads
Yeah. I
to a
try to
more
be
casual
very
conversation that's not
right.
super like, let me sell this house to you or let me get you to work with me, which I wouldn't imagine you're pushing, but that can help. The other
No.
thing that brings to
Yeah.
me is more information about them that I can tap into later. So if I'm reaching out, I'm not just reaching out to say like, hey, there's this house, or hey, do you want to have a buyer consultation? But it might be like, that restaurant you mentioned, like I checked it out the other day and it was really great. Or, you said your daughter was looking for whatever for a Christmas present and it looks like they have it at Winkies. Or, like you can provide other things of value or like thank them
Yeah.
for something. It can be an interaction that's not directly related to I'm trying to work with you. And that can build that relationship. A lot of times people who are looking at open houses they think they're not ready. They think they're a year or two out, right? Like that's one of the first things people start doing. They start looking online and then they end up at an open house. And then if they're not prepared, suddenly they want to make an offer and they're writing it with the listing agent. They don't have a pre-approval yet. They don't know what buyer agency is. They haven't had a buyer consult. They're putting themselves in a bad position. So it's a good time to catch them in a way that you can be a good resource to them. One of the things I would do at open houses is I have a page that explains buyer agency. And so I'm very upfront about that. Like, hey, I'm not, in many cases, I'm doing open houses. I'm not the listing agent. So I'm not the listing agent. So the benefit is that I could be a buyer's agent for you. Cool thing about buyer agency is you get all these benefits. And with me, it's no cost to you. So here's a little info about what that means. As you're looking around at open houses, you may come across the listing agent. And if you want a full representative, it's really good to do that in advance. You can talk about the benefits of a consultation. Like, I find that people really appreciate having a little time to chat before you really get into it. This market moves really fast. It's really intense. You have to be super aggressive. It's really quick moving. It doesn't mean you don't have an opportunity, but it means it's a really good idea to be prepared. So even people who are thinking a year out or so, I've met with just to kind of help them get their ducks in a row and help them be prepared. give them some really good resources so that they're really set up for success when the time comes to write an offer. Because I'll tell you, it happens where you find a house online, you go to the open house, and oh my God, it's perfect. And then it's like, oh no, we're not ready. And things move too quickly to have time to figure that out after the fact. So you can kind of tell like cautionary tales a little bit. You can read, I mean, it's all about reading people, right? Like you're not going to have, with some people, you'll have time to have a full conversation. With other people, it's pretty brief. So if you can provide them something of value they can take with them, that's not just an MLS sheet about the house, that's a good thing to do. You know, you can send them, you can give them like a little brochure about you. You can give them something with a link to your Instagram, your Facebook. You know, there are definitely times I've had people I've met at an open house. I thought we had a good connection. They totally ghosted me. They wouldn't respond to my phone calls or emails. And then like 2 months later, they reach out of the blue. Hey, we were at that open house on Santa Monica and we're ready to start looking for a home. We wanted to meet with you. Oh, cool. Great. So,
Right.
and you know, a certain percentage just are going to ghost you. Like that's just how it goes. You know, like I said, when I'm usually a good open house is I get maybe 1 buyer out of it. 2 is like great. But you know, a lot of people walking through the door might already have an agent and they don't want to talk about it. They might not really, they might be nosy neighbors. But any way you can build that relationship, you know, you might get listings out of it. If it's somebody in the neighborhood. I met a couple once at an open house in Brown Deer who came through, told me they lived in the neighborhood and they'd been remodeling their house. We had a nice chat. I got their information. And then I kept in touch with them for, I think it was almost 3 years before the house was
Wow.
ready and they were ready to move. And then I listed it and it was a cream puff of a house. It was easy to sell. It was great. But I really put in the time to build that relationship. So, you know, some of them are longer term and every agent says, let me put you on an MLS auto email. You know, every agent says, oh, can you just sign in here and I'll send you some details about this house. You know, like you have to find a way to be a little more creative and offer something of value that they're excited about. I've also done drawings before at open houses. So I'll ask people to, you know, like 1 to 5, a couple of things about the house, because then I'm getting feedback to give to the seller. And I have them fill out their, you know, name, address, whatever, fold it up, put it in a little jar so nobody can see it. I definitely put some sample ones in there ahead of time. Like my mom's always at my open houses. Like her name's always in the jar. So there's a few in there so they know that, oh, okay, you know, you have a pretty good chance. You got like a 1 in 5 chance. I'm giving away a, you know, gift card to Collectivo or Winkies or whatever, you know, you can do a local place or whatever. But if you have a little sign up there and you're like, hey, I just want to make sure you don't miss out. We're giving this away. You know, I'm giving away 3 Collectivo gift cards. You have a great chance to do that. That's such an easy follow-up later, right? Like you don't even have to say much. You can just about real estate, like, hey, just want to let you know, we picked your name. Congratulations. I'd love to send this to you in the mail or drop it off or whatever. You know, so then you get their address, you get their email, you get their phone number. So that can be a worthwhile thing too. And then if you set it up so that it's feedback, and you can say like, must be filled out completely to win or something like that. But people generally respond to stuff like that. If it's short, it can't be a whole page, you know, it's got to be like a little slip of paper. But that's been one I've used before. Yeah, I find auto email super annoying. Like if you put them in a drip campaign in Command, don't make that the only thing you do, because then you become the annoying extra email in their inbox. I have clients from 2014 who still get emails from a subscription from an agent from an open house that they never chose to work with, and they still get her stuff and they like hate her because they just can't get out of her email stuff. So, I mean, if you use those, use them sparingly, make sure it's something of value. But yeah, there are other ways to follow up. Annie Jerzyk is a great person to talk to about that too. You know, she's got all her little slips of paper. She has her system for how often she follows up with people. You know, some of it's persistence. And like you said, Bethany, you got to be careful. You don't want to be annoying or too aggressive. But if you're always coming from contribution, if you're not always hounding them about buying a house or selling a house or whatever it was that you were trying to get the business for, but if it's more about them, if it's something you can offer, whatever it is, that generally goes over better. And if you're
Yeah.
active on social media and you can get them on your social media, that's a good way to gauge like what they're up to, especially Facebook. You can really see like birthday or, they're working from home now. Looks like they need some more space, whatever it is. So it takes a little more intentionality, and you have to kind of weigh that, as you have a larger list of people from your open houses. Like, am I reaching out to every single one individually with something particular to them, or can I offer something different that I can give to everybody? But I think being creative can help. Yeah, and sometimes you're just not going to get them, and you got to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
If
think
people
kind
know
of
that you're like,
when,
oh, but I want to work with you, like that can be a little off-putting.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think getting some other information from them, like, pets or kids or
yeah,
hobbies or whatever, and then contacting them, kind of, it's like coming in the back door
hmm
and, creating more of a connection. I'm going to work on doing that a little bit more. I mean, I think I
yeah,
kind of do that as I'm talking to them anyways, just because it's a conversation.
hmm
And I know one of the things that helped me in one of our trainings or whatever is when you're doing open houses, you're not the listing agent and you're doing open houses. Obviously you want to represent the home and answer questions and stuff,
hmm
but it's not necessarily your job to sell that property.
yeah,
It's to make a connection and get leads.
yeah. And you're there as a resource. So I think one of the things that I notice a lot with newer agents is that, well, not even new, to be honest, is they have an open house and they have not done their research about the house. So I walk in as a consumer and I'm like, hey, so is there air conditioning? And they're like, is there air conditioning? Yeah, looks like there's air conditioning. Like, cool, thanks. Like, that's how you're gonna work for me too. That's really impressive. So taking the time to do the research, to look at it through a buyer's eyes, to come early and walk through and check that there's nothing weird going on. Um, so often if I pop into an open house, it's, they're running through the door to turn the lights on like 3 minutes before the open starts. They barely have signage up. They haven't walked through the house, so they don't know what's going on in the house. They don't have all the details memorized, so they're checking the info sheet instead of having that in their minds. So even though they're not necessarily there to sell that house, they're demonstrating how they're going to approach either selling a house or showing a house. So that's a good opportunity to really look like you've got your stuff together. So I do think that's an important piece of it too. Be prepared, take the time, have your stuff all together. Don't go rushing in at the last minute. I think that also makes you feel like brings a calmness about you, right? If you're like rushing around, oh my God, starts at 10, it's 5 to 10, I'm running through the door. I just ran down the block and shoved my sign and I had a hard time getting it in the ground and it took me longer, like give yourself extra time, because people walking in, if you're like, whew, as they walk through the door and you're like sweating and your papers are everywhere and your bag and your coat are still out, like that looks terrible. And it happens, I see it all the time. So,
I had
go ahead.
I had the hardest showing this year. It was a condo and it was four sides surrounding a courtyard. There were four entrances to that courtyard. They were all locked. The condo itself was on the second floor, which you had to access by an interior staircase. So I didn't know where the hell to station myself, because people could have come from any of those four doors. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they were all locked, and then if I were showing it upstairs, it'd be locked downstairs. So what do you do in those situations?
You get a buddy.
Ah, okay.
Well,
You go
I
ahead
can
of
tell you
time,
what
you figure
I've
out where
done.
the issues are, and you bring a pal. Yeah, go ahead. Bethany, did we lose you?
Yeah, I was a
Maybe.
fill-in on this one, so I didn't know to bring a buddy, but that's a
Oh,
great
yeah.
idea.
I would say as part of your preparation for an open house, anytime, I mean, you should have enough notice that you can at least drive by it, if not do an initial
Mhm.
walkthrough, or at least talk to the listing agent and say like,
Yeah,
okay, what are the things I need to know that aren't obvious in the listing? Um, yeah, given the size of it, given the way it's set up, you can tell if you're going to need some other set of eyes.
hmm
Um, especially with all those doors locking, like I would definitely have
yeah.
somebody helping.
Lesson learned.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, you have an awkward experience and you learn.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and opens can be really honestly just great practice for talking about what's happening in the market, for talking to people who are thinking about buying, for observing
Mm.
parts of a house, right? You're there for like an hour and a half or two, like just getting a feel for the things that people pay attention to, observing. A lot of times I kind of hang out sort of in the middle where I can see the front door and easily get to it. But also, especially if there's nobody else in there, if someone goes upstairs, I'll like be a creeper and hang at the bottom of the stairs just to hear what they're saying because that can be really insightful. Um, yeah, I mean, they're not all going to be home run open houses. And when you have a ton of people coming through, like that's exciting, but it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to talk to people. So you really have to have your stuff together, which is why it's nice to have some kind of collateral to hand to them, something that's not like a handful to carry around. So if it's like a brochure or something smaller, that works great. I usually ask people to sign in as they leave. That doesn't always work great, especially if they sneak out the back door. But I find it off-putting if you walk into an open house and the first thing the agent does is say like, "Can you sign in?" You know. So I typically try to greet them, give them some info, tell them a couple highlights, let them, take your time, feel free to walk around. I'm here to answer questions, try to keep it kind of low key. And then I may pop in later and check in and try to start more of a conversation. And then as they're leaving, I'll try to get them to sign in. Um, it feels a little bit more like we've at least had a chance to like talk a little bit before I'm trying to get all their details. Um, but yeah, I having a helper is not a bad idea. And
Okay.
honestly, you could bring in a lender. Lenders are more than happy, most of them, to be there with a captive audience of new buyers who
Mm.
likely don't have loans. And oftentimes they have a budget for stuff like snacks or, a prize for your drawing or whatever. Then you've also got somebody as far as safety goes, you've got a partner there for your sake and just to keep an eye on what's happening in the house. So if you don't want to bring another agent, that's another option too, is to have a lender with you.
Can you talk about a little bit about signage strategy? I have had some that were like very much into a winding subdivision, and I ran out of signs, or you had to turn this way and that way and this way and that way, and then I ran out of signs. So how far do
Yeah.
you set out the first sign? How many miles away? And then where do you put out the remainder? How many signs do you do for an open house?
So the like best case scenario, or I guess the extreme scenario, I'm trying to remember if this is the Loken group or another agent, but one of the Keller Williams agents in a different area told a story about the number of signs that they put out for their open houses and how effective it is. And it's insane. It's like 25 to 40 signs or something like that. And they start them like at the grocery store and they arrow them all the way, every 10 feet, 15 feet, whatever. They're like all the way to the house. That's one extreme version, but certainly it gets people's attention. And if your signs have your contact info on them, it's like, wow, Alex is really working hard for these open houses for these sellers. I think I want him to sell my house, right? So it gives that impression. It's more than just the open. Um, in terms of what happens around here that I see more often, at least three, at least, the ends of the block, the find the most main street, flags or balloons, not just signs. And having one in front of the house is important. Even if it has a rider that says open whatever, people are sometimes really hesitant to go in unless it looks very welcoming. So I put a sign in front with flags, and then I put flags all the way up to the door. So it's very obvious. This is happening now. You are welcome to come in.
Where do you
I'll
buy your
often
flags?
mine are all from the real estate store, which is not open anymore. I don't know if Minuteman Press is doing those as
Hmm.
part of they have signage there. I don't know if they have flags too. You can buy them online too. They're just like a dowel with a plastic thing.
I saw like pennants. I didn't see signs.
Yeah. The last time I was looking into signs, I was trying to get custom signs that had my logo on them. But that was a while ago.
Mhm.
So, but you can usually buy them in bundles. They're not too expensive, but they're really worthwhile. I did find a lot of success with having balloons on the sign in front of the house. That seems to catch people's eye. It can get a little expensive. It's not super eco-friendly, but it does draw people in. Yeah, and oftentimes I'll have a sign on the door too. Welcome, open house, blah blah blah. Come on in. Because I still think people are hesitant to like walk up to somebody's door randomly and like go inside. So the more welcoming it is, I think the more likely they are to go in without hesitation. Yeah, and you can, I mean, there's the big folding black signs that you can order through Mandy. I've got, I wonder if I can pull them up. Please hold. I've got these.
Oh, nice.
They're lightweight. They're on like a little metal thing. They're kind of a plasticky material, so they can get wet, and they have an arrow. So I can put them, you know, they're double-sided and put them all over. They don't work great when the ground's frozen and there's no snow. You have to keep that in mind.
Mhm.
But they're cheaper and they're lighter, so I can have
Great.
more of them. Yeah, I think just having a consistent color story and brand so that they're not like following signs all the way to the house and then it changes to a different sign and they're like, oh wait, is this, you know? A lot of people are going to get to an open house because they see it online. The
Mhm.
people you're going to get randomly from signage are the ones who are even less likely to be really looking. But it's not a bad thing. I mean, you can develop a relationship with anybody you make contact with. So having more signs up is not a bad idea.
Mhm. So how many total signs do you have, and how far out do you start your farthest sign?
I think I have like 6 or 7 total.
Mhm.
It depends on where I am. You know, if it's a house on Santa Monica, I'm going to put one at the end of the block. I'm going to put one in front of the house. And put one at the end of the other block. In Whitefish Bay, don't put your open house signs in the boulevard. They will take them. Like the city doesn't want them there, they'll take them. And if you put it like kind of in someone's yard, you may end up. I had one once in Bayside where the neighbor called the police, and the police I had to go to the police station to pick up my sign because it was in the neighbor's corner next to the street. Like some weird stuff like that happens sometimes too.
You know, I've checked with suburbs, and it seems like there's very few prohibitions against signs. So,
Generally speaking, there are not. And generally speaking, people are quite tolerant of them. You know, you got to be thoughtful about where you put them so they're not like right in the middle of a walkway or something like that, or your flags aren't like sticking out poking people. But yeah, I mean, think about if you were driving through the neighborhood, what would grab your attention? Where would you need the sign to be? Where would you need the next sign to be? You know, like it varies by location. If you're in a subdivision, you can put one at the entrance to the subdivision, and then like, where do you turn? Where do you turn? You know, having those available just in case. And like I said, being prepared is the biggest part. So if you've driven there before, you know what you're dealing with. You kind of know how many signs you need to have, how many flags you need to have, that sort of thing.
so
Yeah.
let's say you're in a suburb without sidewalks. Can you put it next to the road, even though it's on somebody's property?
If it's a
So let's say like Fox Point or Bayside or whatever, or where there's no sidewalks. And it's a
Yeah,
corner.
it depends on the area. I mean, I've put them on corners before like that. I've put them on boulevards like that before. You know, like I said, it varies depending where you are. I mean, you can kind of get a feel for if the neighbors like got a fence up or if they're sitting on their porch watching you. You know, it's a lot of common sense. Does this feel strange? Would I be mad if that was my house? Or if you see them like, hey, is it okay if I set this sign here? I mean, anything you're doing out in the world,
Nobody's
people
out
are
these days.
keeping
No.
tabs. Well, right now, no.
Wait. Yeah, even in the suburbs, nobody comes out usually unless they're mowing their lawn.
Yeah. Which in that case, oftentimes they don't care. I mean, our signs are up all the time everywhere, so
Yeah.
just use common sense.
Hey, Amanda,
Yeah.
do you know, is it possible, and I am meeting with Lindsay, when to do a campaign, is it possible to like target like apartment buildings? Or is it just you have to pick a general like zip code or area?
When it comes to command,
Like to do a, yeah. Like to do
that
a
would be a
postcard
question for
campaign.
Lindsay. I mean, it's not a bad
Okay.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. The tricky thing with rentals is finding owner names.
right.
It's not the same as owner records. So that can be tricky.
Yeah. Right. I just know like where I live, you know, we're out and about and talking mostly dog people connections.
Mhm.
And, you know, and we mentioned, you know, in passing, I'm a real estate agent, this and that and the other thing. And it's like, it's been like the third dog friend owner that we just found out is moving because they just bought a house. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know,
Yeah.
it's, you know, frustrating. And it's like, you want to be top of mind, but it's like, well, how do I get, you know, without forcing something literally into their hand when I run into them? I want something mailed to them. And then we're out and about in the neighborhood and it's like, oh yeah, I just got your postcard.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's another, you know, coming from a place of value, what can you offer them? You know, bringing it up in conversation too.
Yep.
If you've got like a buddy with you that you walk with, they can be the one to be like,
Yep.
oh yeah, Bethany, I was wondering like, what's the market like? Like you can have like a wing person, you know?
Right. Yeah, we do that. And I've put my card, a little thing with dog treats and handed out to our dog
Yeah, that's a
friends
great idea.
too.
That's a great idea. Well,
Yeah.
and also
Yeah.
like you can't beat yourself up because you never know, right? Like somebody's got an aunt who's been a real estate agent for 25 years and the whole family would kill them if
Yeah.
they didn't use this aunt. Like you don't know what the story is. And you just have to trust that like if they're working with somebody else that was a better fit for them, you know, for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't serve them as well as you would have, but maybe there's more to that relationship. So you can't focus on the ones you can't win. I mean, you're going to make yourself crazy. I can't tell you how many people I've missed out on working with or have gotten accepted offers. And I'm like, shit, I've been talking to this
I
person
know.
for 4 years. You know, like
I
you
know.
can't because you're also going to get people
Yeah.
that fall in your lap and you're like, wow, I didn't even really work for this. Like it just balances out. It does.
Yeah.
Could you
Yeah, I
go to
It's
the
a game
lobby
of
and
numbers.
could you go to the
Yeah.
lobby and photograph the mailboxes and then you'd know the names?
Yeah. I don't know. You can't, a lot of times they have locked lobbies. You can't actually get into the mail area.
Also,
And
if
that'd be
you're
kind of
like the
creepy.
creeper who was taking pictures
Yeah.
of the mailboxes just to send postcards, like I don't know how many people would want to work with you. You got
Yeah.
to look big picture on that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to find
Yeah.
another creative way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think making those connections more directly is not a bad idea, but like a postcard follow up, yeah, sure. You know, as many touches,
Right.
as many ways as you can be top of mind. But whatever you're doing, you've got to do it consistently for a good period of time. If you're farming anywhere, you're not going to get people in the first month. You know, this is like many months to years worth of like being top of mind, having your face out there, reminding people that you're there. You know, it's a long-term game.
Yeah.
So it's
That's why
one
I'm trying
strategy,
to,
it's one stream of business, but it can't be your only one because it's a longer term situation. The people who
right. And it's
own
like, you have to,
areas and neighborhoods have done it for a long time.
yeah. And you have to consider budget, being a newer agent, it's like, you can't keep
Mhm.
spending money unless you have money coming in. So finding more of a low cost or free, grassroots campaign.
Mhm.
It's kind of where I have to go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, there are definitely things you can do that don't cost a lot of money that you just have to be consistent about. Consistency in anything in your business is extremely important. Extremely important. So if you think
Yeah.
you're trying something, it's not working, you're like, shoot, I'm going to try something else. Like, give it time, give it a little time, even with your system for open houses, even with how like everything you do, you're going to have the instinct to like immediately change it if you don't get exactly what you were hoping for the first time. And, running it by other people, getting some other feedback is not a bad idea, but I would say with a lot of things that you're doing in your business, being more consistent about it is going to give you better results, especially when you're trying to get leads. You just have to be persistent and consistent.
Yeah.
I have a random question for you.
Yeah.
So even in this hot market, there's always a few homes that are like orphans and they don't sell, or they sit on the market.
Mhm.
What's our ability to approach the owner and say, if it doesn't work out with your current broker, would you consider me for the next time? You
Nope.
can't.
Nope. If they are under contract with a listing agent, you cannot contact them directly. In fact, a listing agent could even have an issue with you sending something in the mail, even if it was like a blanket mailer. A lot of times you'll see when those go out, it'll say like if you're under contract with another listing broker, this is sent, this is not intended to be a solicitation. If they're under contract with another listing agent, you can't touch that.
I thought it's an exception to talk about future periods or something like that.
No.
Hey, man, I have a question to piggyback off of that.
Yeah.
Now, I have a really good friend. Him and his fiance are looking to buy in Arizona, and her
Mhm.
mom, or his fiance's mom, is an agent out there, and they aren't having the best experience. He feels like she normally targets homes more like in a range that they can't find, and he feels like she's not as available. Now, would I be able to give him a referral if they were to break contract? Is that something I can start to do prior, or is that something he has to break said contract, or like a buyer contract that he has with his soon-to-be mother-in-law, to find an agent that fits out with him?
Does he have a buyer agency with her?
He does.
Okay. That is another thing we can't touch. You can't give any advice on how to get out of a contract with another agent, whether it's a listing contract or a buyer agency. That's grounds for arbitration. Definitely not worth risking for you. Also, that sounds real complicated.
Oh
And
yeah,
I
it
don't
is.
know if that's your friend's best idea. I mean, that sounds more like maybe they need to sit down and talk about what they're really looking for and have a real hard conversation about like, we can't afford these things, is because I mean, that's his mother-in-law. I don't know what her relationship is like with his fiance, but
Oh, for sure.
that's
No,
some
that's.
messy stuff. I would
Oh
not get
yeah.
involved in that.
Well, yeah. No, he kind of just like told me that they had that conversation. It wasn't like
Mhm.
anything that like I was looking for a referral. I was just kind of like, yo, man, that's like kind of like
Yeah.
wild. He.
I mean, you can say like, if for some reason it doesn't work out with her and you decide to part ways, I can be a resource to you for another agent out there. But I'm not allowed to give you advice on how to break that relationship, or what to do as a buyer. Like technically you shouldn't be giving him any advice. If he's like comes to you and he's like, check this out, this is how the inspection went, what do you think? Technically you shouldn't be giving him advice. You're not his agent. You don't have buyer agency.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, be careful with that stuff, because if you've got an agent on the other side who finds out that you were involved and they're losing a contract with somebody, they could take you to arbitration. It's just not
So-
worth it.
For sure.
Even if you see a listing and you're like, God, that's being so poorly marketed, pictures are terrible, the agent never responds to my calls, somebody could take so much better care of them for that listing. You can't
So
do
what's
it.
the timing of picking up expired listings? Because you hear about that all the time.
If it's expired, it's expired. I mean,
So
you have to
wait.
watch for the ones that relist right away. Like there are some that relist right away. So I would always double check the address in the coming soons, in the new listings, to just make sure that there's not like an immediate relisting of it. I would read the private remarks. A lot of times the agent will put something in there that's like, do not contact sellers or being relisted or something like that.
How do
But
you determine the date of expiration?
if it's expired in MLS, there's a date on it.
Okay, and only then.
Yeah.
You can't just take 6 months from the last, new listing date or whatever, or the. Okay.
Nope. As far as you know, if it's not under contract anymore, they have to put it in MLS as expired or
Okay.
withdrawn or whatever it is. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I would be really, really careful about anything that appears to still be under contract. It's just not worth the hassle.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Tom, welcome to the party. How you doing?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Are you taking
Good.
some notes?
Pardon me?
Are you taking some notes?
I have some notes, mental and written, so
Cool.
trying to soak everything up.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what this week and next week for launch are more of an open forum. So it's, kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, talking about topics that maybe we haven't touched on in a while. So if there's
Awesome.
anything that's popped up in your mind, if whether it's a short
Okay.
question for today or something we can discuss next week, let me know.
Will there'll be a launch next Tuesday as well? This type. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I'm lots to learn and lots to absorb. So
Yeah.
But we're
Yeah.
a little bit by a little bit. So that's a good way to look at it.
Cool. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about open houses. We talked a little bit about kind of reaching out to people to try to get new business. A little bit
heard it.
about buyer agency. So yeah, kind of touching on a
Sure.
number of different things.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I said last week, if anybody has something that they want to make sure we touch on for next week, we'll be in another open forum next week. You can always send it to me in advance, and that way I can prepare and make sure I have whatever I may need for that. Otherwise, I'm happy to just kind of have a conversation about anything that's come up. We've got about 10 minutes left. Does anybody else have something they want to touch on?
I think one idea that I have is I'm planning on sending out kind of a New Year's card or something like that.
Yeah.
Just because with Christmas, it's like everyone gets bombarded with Christmas cards from friends, family, blah, 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 other businesses. And I kind of I was going to do a holiday card like that. And I'm like, I think it's going to get lost just because my personal experience, I get so much. And then it's like, oh, that was nice. Oh, that was nice. Oh, that was nice. So I decided to put a pause on that and do a New Year's thing instead.
I do that too for the same reason.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it's one of the
Yay,
first things
good.
they see in the new year. And if you had at any point talked to them about how they were going to buy or sell next year, that's a good time to just put a little note in there and be like, hey, if you ever want to chat about your, plans for the new year or whatever, keep it light. I don't put my business card in my New Year's cards, but I have my business name, like my team name and my website on my cards that's printed on there. In the past, I've done it like on the back of the card. So I don't have to say it. I can just sign from Amanda,
Right.
But that's a good idea. Yeah. I finding opportunities when not everybody else, there's like the things that everybody does, like find something that's not that. Everybody gets those things and they kind of blow them off. being creative, having, you know, with your timing, with what you send out, with how it looks, all those things will be a way to stand out, because
I'm in the
you're not the only real
process.
estate agent they know.
I'm
Yeah,
sending
Tom.
out my business cards with, put 3 cards inside a Keller Williams note card. And then I write a personal note to, depending upon who they are in my life, whether, family, friends, whoever, short, long. And then
Yeah.
probably about 80 to 100. And I've sent about 30 or 40 this week. And I'll send another, kind of a little every couple of weeks. And I'll follow up with phone calls at the beginning of the year, and just see how that goes. So
Yeah, that's great.
good.
Having that follow-up is good.
Yep,
Not just
yep.
sending something in the mail, but also following up with a call or a text.
That way you make sure that they looked at it.
Yeah.
That they have it for sure. So
Well, and it's more of a personal touch too, right? If you're sending something with a little bit of a personal note, if you're calling, if you're texting directly, rather than sending a mass email, rather than sending just a mailer, then it's more about them.
And I hand wrote the envelopes. I could have printed labeling, but then, oh God, are they going to open it if it's a printed label? This way they see my shitty handwriting and they see my return address, so they know who's getting it.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
those are the kinds of touches that people appreciate. They get postcards from tons of real estate agents. What can you do to stand out in a different way?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Yeah. And if they're family or friends too, you can be like, hey, so I'm testing these out. What do you think? Give me your feedback.
Yeah. They can comment on the car. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah. Yeah. Having some go-to people that you can be like, is this weird? Is this cool? What do you think of this idea? Like some of my very, very early clients who've become dear friends who I met at an open house, they are my peanut gallery. So when I'm like coming up with ideas, I'm like, Danny, what do you think of this? Is this weird? Is this a good idea? what would you do? And then he just like comes up with ideas on his own, and he'll be like, okay, so I'm thinking of something you could do for the holidays. Like, here's an idea. So it's nice to have some people to kind of empower them to be your go-to, your support system or your idea tank.
absolutely.
Yeah, kind of get them involved in that way can be really beneficial.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, during the holidays, I was saying at the beginning, like people are really crazy busy right now. It's super hectic trying to get everything ready in time for the holiday. But when the holiday finally happens, or it's like the day after Christmas, that's when people are kind of like coming down from it all, and they're probably scrolling on their phone. They probably don't have a lot of direction with their life at that moment. They're just recovering. That's a good time to not ask for something, but to offer something of value, even if it's just like a funny meme that you found and you send out, or some kind of great resource that you can post on social media about whatever it is, recycling your wrapping paper or something, finding different ways to kind of pop up in people's minds after all the craziness can be a good thing. Doing a drawing or asking people to share their favorite gift, or like the funniest thing they got for the holiday, or there's a lot of things you can do where it's like a fun thing. And I'm not necessarily talking about real estate, but if you go to my Facebook page, my background is a house, like there's things in there to remind people what I do. My Instagram right now, I'm trying to push people into following my team page. So I'm putting my regular stuff in there, and every once in a while it's like oh, check out more of this on my team page. So you can do things like that kind of in this no man's land between Christmas and New Year's when people have some time. You can also just like reach out and call people. Hey, it's been a crazy year. I was just checking in to see how you're doing. Did you survive the holidays? What are you doing for New Year's? Stuff like that. Here's a resource on social media for a chef I know who's doing a pickup meal for New Year's dinner, all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of good ways you can just kind of lightly touch people, make it a little personal. Don't be pushing, I'm selling real estate. Do you want to buy or sell in the new year? But like finding other ways to offer something of value, to show that you care, to touch base with people, that goes a long way, you know. And there's different, whatever you're doing, it should be genuine to you. Like for me, I send text videos, and I always do that, so people expect it. It's a 20-second video of me. You know, I do stuff on Instagram in my stories. That's really consistent with what I always do. You know, I send handwritten notes to people. The people I know who will answer, I'll call them. You know, if they're like in sales, I know they'll answer their phone, I'll call them. But I try to do things that are consistent in what I think would be well received by the people I'm reaching out to. You know, I'll send my avatar as a like, you know, yay, we survived the holidays or whatever, you know, just whatever it is, it should feel consistent with you. You know, it shouldn't be out of the ordinary, because that's when people are like, that's weird. Tom got into real estate. Now he's like a real estate guy and he's all acting weird and I don't like it. You know, like how many people do you know who get into those like direct marketing things where they're like trying to sell you something, and like suddenly their you know, Facebook page has this picture of this person with their like beauty counter products in their hand, and like everything they do is like that, and it suddenly they're not them anymore, and you're like, geez, they kind of sold out, like what's going on? Like just be consistent with who you are, with what people expect from you. They're going to want to work with you because they want to work with you, and you're going to have to deliver whatever you're selling, which is you. So if you're out there saying you're this like buttoned up suit person who like blah blah blah, and then they meet you and they're like, oh, this is not at all.
Oh, you froze.
Lost you there for a sec. Oh,
To other people, right? Like I get a lot of referrals and repeat business, and it's because people know exactly who they're dealing with. They can easily sell me to somebody else. They can describe me in 5 words or less, and then they know that's who they're going to get. So
You were
keeping
smart
that
to
in
have an
mind with anything
Instagram.
you're doing.
You were smart to have an Instagram handle that has both your name and sells homes in it. So you can post whatever you want and it still says Amanda sells homes, so you don't
Every
forget
time. Yep. That was on purpose. Yeah, I didn't want to just have the name of, you know, Milwaukee Homes for Sale or something, because then they don't necessarily know my name. So if they see
Right.
me out in public, yeah. And that's a weird thing, but it does happen. If I'm out and about, I may see somebody who's like, you're Amanda. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. You're Amanda Sells Homes. Oh, you know me from Instagram. Yeah. Yeah. So any of those things you're doing, it's always good to keep that in mind. It's to just be consistent and genuine to you. So it's something that makes sense for you. We're all different. That's how we end up working with different people, right? There's an agent for every person. There's a person for every agent. I don't need to work with everybody. Not everybody's a good fit for me, and I'm not a good fit for everybody. So whatever I'm putting out there, I'm trying to attract the people that are going to appreciate working with me. So, and it happens. I can't tell you how many times
that you like to work with.
I like organized people
Mhm.
who, I can't tell you how often I sit down and meet with buyers or sellers and they have a planner or they have a binder or they have their notebook. Like those are my people. You know, people who are excited about what's going on in the community, if they have any kind of service industry background, if they have a public service background. You know, I was a teacher, I worked in restaurants, like those, we speak the same language. So yeah, and people who are new to town, that's always super fun to me. Get to introduce them to the city. So, but you'll find that there are people who you just really jive with, like on the first or second chat, whether you meet them at an open house, whether they get sent to you by somebody else. And the more you're being truly genuine through all of your marketing, through, you know, reaching out to other people, through how you are when you're working in the business, that just puts people at ease. They know what to expect.
Are there better or worse days for signing up for a consult with you?
For accountability?
Yeah.
I generally avoid Tuesdays. That's a big Zoom day for me and I'm wiped. but usually Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday afternoons tend to be better. Yeah, just text me if you want to set up a time and I'll let you know when I'm free. Typically a week out.
Okay.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, that's about all I got. Just a reminder, if you have questions regarding contracts or working through a transaction, that sort of stuff, the helpline is there for you. So use that number. I highly recommend texting first. You'll get Andy Stillman and Stephanie Minnick. She just got married last week, so I don't know if she's fully online, but we also have the holiday coming up. But that's a good first resource. I'm here to be your accountability coach. So if you want to set up that 20-minute call to go over your goals, your progress on your lead generation, making a plan for using your time well, that's the kind of stuff I'm here for. So you can reach out to me for that. We have, I think nearly everything's labeled in the YouTube channel now. So that's still a really excellent resource you can go back to. And we have so many new great classes coming up, including Ignite in January. If you haven't done Ignite, I super recommend it. It's extremely informative and helpful, and it's going to be virtual this time around. So if you haven't done Ignite, highly recommend it. That'll be coming up. Different agent teaches every class. It's very good content. And we'll continue doing launch and productivity into the new year. Janine and I are going to be consulting with each other to make sure we're not overlapping and to make sure we're kind of hitting all the major points into the new year. So if you have some feedback on things you think we haven't touched on, that would be helpful. Let us know. Yeah, so I'll see you guys next week. We don't have a team, we don't have a office meeting, but I'll be here for another launch open forum. And if you think of stuff between now and then you want to touch on, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll come with some info and we'll chat and see where the conversation takes us. I think this was a good one today. We touched on a lot of things. And Bethany, I'll get you the helpline number. It's in the launch group too, if you search helpline.
I think I have it.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I had the right one.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check and I'll send it to you. I'm doing this on my phone, so I can check it at the same time.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Great.
Thanks,
well, thanks
Merry
for
Christmas.
coming. Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Have
Merry
a great
Merry
break.
Christmas.
Couple days
Take
off.
care.
Awesome. I'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.